This lesson we're talking about frequency distributions and histograms. And frequency distributions are part of descriptive statistics, which is that branch of statistics that involves the organization, summarization, and display of data. You've heard that line that a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, in this case, a frequency distribution or histogram is worth 1,000 numbers, because basically we're trying to get a lot of information organized, displayed, summarized, so that your brain can process that information efficiently and effectively. So to demonstrate, we're going to take these numbers here. Researchers asked 40 teens how many hours of sleep they typically get, and this is what the teens responded. Our first step is to make a frequency distribution, which is a table that shows classes or groups of data with a count or frequency of the number of entries in each class. So basically, I'm going to take all these numbers and put it into separate groups. I've made 3 groups or 3 classes, each with a class width of 3. So each group has 3 possible hours in it: 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And it's important to note that classes all need to be of equal widths. Okay, now here's the fun part. We have to get all the numbers into one of the groups. It takes a little bit of time to do this. We're going to make tally marks and then count the tally marks to figure out the frequency. But in the process of doing that, you actually get to know the data, and that's valuable. So here we go. Let's dive in. We're going to take the 9 and we'll put it into that class. 12 goes into this class. Okay, we have all the tally marks done, and now we know that, let's see, in the 5 to 7 range, we know that 5 teens fit into that category. 8 to 10 hours of sleep, we've got 23 teens in that category, and for the 11 to 13 hours of sleep, we have 12 teens. We can add those numbers up and see that we have 40 teens that were surveyed. Next step now is to do a frequency histogram. This is the picture. So let's put our frequencies in. We've got 5, 23, and 12. And we're going to represent each of these frequencies as a bar graph on the chart. So I've got each of my classes labeled down here. And for each one, I will add a bar graph to represent the number. 8 to 10, that's 23. Kind of a crooked bar. 11 to 13, that's 12. It's about here. Now we have a picture. You can glance at that and immediately you can see that most teens, because that middle bar is so high, most teens get between 8 to 10 hours of sleep at night. Awesome. Important to note, there can be no overlap between classes, which means that each number can only go into one particular class. Gaps between classes, notice that I left these gaps right here. Those are okay for discrete or countable data. But if you have continuous data, you don't want to have any gaps in your bar graph. The next thing we're going to talk about is called a relative frequency histogram. And relative frequencies show us percentages. What percentage of teens got between 5 and 7 hours of sleep, or between 8 and 10 hours of sleep? And to find that, we just take the frequency, which was 5 teens for that, and divide it by the total number of teens. And if you take 50 divided by 40, you get 0.125. or about 12.5%. For the next group, we had, what did we have? 23 divided by 40. 23 divided by 40 gives us 0.575, about 57.5%. And the last is 12 out of 40, which is about 30%. And one way to double check yourself, make sure you've gotten all these numbers right, is to add those together, and they should equal 1. Okay, now I've got this other thing here, midpoints. And this is just another way to label a histogram. You can either use the intervals of the groups, or you can simply put the midpoint down. So between 5 and 7, the midpoint is 6. Between 8 and 10, the midpoint is 9. And between 11 and 13, the midpoint is 12. So instead of putting the frequencies now on this chart, we're going to put the percentages. So the one with the midpoint of 6 is a little over 0.01. That's going to go here. And then 57, that's going to be about here. And the last one, 30%. Okay, now compare that to the frequency histogram above, and you should see that they have the same shape. It's the same information, same data, just coming at it from a little bit of a different perspective. So there we go. Frequency histograms and frequency distributions. Thanks for being here.